Welcome to Parentless Podcast. Please note that in this show, you may hear graphic descriptions or language that may not be appropriate for everyone. Listener discretion advised. Aloha, it's Stephanie. Hey, I just wanted to give you an official shout out now that we've been together for 18 episodes. And if you haven't been with me for all 18, now is your time to shine. Head on back to where it all started, episode 1. And listen to my friend Meredith tell that story about her mom, a waitress, and her mom's glass eye. You will crack up. I know I did. In order to shine and to know why you would be doing so, as well as see some amazing bonus video footage from this interview, head over to patreon.com/parentlesspodcast. You won't be disappointed.
My name's Antonia. I live in Honolulu, Hawaii. Here professionally, I work in the construction industry. I actually do business development and marketing for a construction consulting firm. I recently tapped into a new endeavor that involves services and goods that will help me relate and share experiences regarding the loss of a loved one. So that's my company called theDLcompany.
This is a fact production of City.
That makes me sad comes and goes by. Could wrote the book of Joe instead. Oh, to go now. Heavy eyes, so help me make this bed over and over. Tell me what it takes to make you stay.
Welcome to Parentless. Thank you so much for taking the time to stop in and share your story.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me who passed away for you. Who was your person?
My father passed away, my dad. My dad's name was Constante Cabrera Agbanawag, Cons for short, what all his friends call him, Cons, Conzo. I was 8 years old when he passed away. It was 1999. He was 52. He just celebrated a couple weeks prior his 52nd birthday.
And what happened with your dad?
So he suffered a heart attack that we did not see coming. It was a massive heart attack that just took his life right then and there. He was camping with my brother in the Big Sur area. It was a Boy Scout camp called Camp Pico Blanco. I wasn't there. It was just those two. And from what I understand, he was kayaking, or he was doing a swimming test so that they could go kayaking later in that week. So he was in the water and he stepped out and he sat down on a picnic bench. He looked at his watch and right looking at his watch, he collapsed right then and there. It was like there was a time to it. It was like a weird omen that he looked at his watch. But yeah, so I think our family finds comfort in that. You know, he was a businessman, so he would have been working at his job in an office, if it were any other week. But we were comforted knowing that he was out in nature with my brother doing something he loved, camping. So, it's a sad, terrible story, but there's light in that.
Right. How old was your brother?
My brother's a year and a half younger than I am. So he's, 6 or 7 in that range. He probably just turned 7 because his birthday's in June. So he was very young. And the worst part of it, and something else I remember really vividly from that day, is when we found out, I was also at a Girl Scout camp that summer, like a day camp, but they were doing the whole backwoods nature thing. I was at a day camp. So my mom brought me home from the camp. We pull up to our house, which is in Salinas, California at the time. And there was people that we knew from the Boy Scouts troop. Some of the other parents were in the driveway waiting for us. And right then and there, my mom knew that something was wrong. I remember her verbalizing that, like she said something to that extent in the car. She's like, "Oh my God, something's wrong." And she sent me inside, and I'm kind of like looking out the window, like seeing them deliver the news to her. And I just see her just collapse on like the hood of the car when they're delivering the news of my dad's passing. So that's what I remember from how that went down. She had to come in and tell me, and that was a whole nother episode of her just sitting me on her lap on the couch in the living room, and I'm facing her, and she says, Daddy had a heart attack and he passed away. And I just didn't believe it. It's your dad or my dad? Like, your dad or my dad? Like, what do you mean Daddy passed away? I freaked out, and it was just screaming. And like, that's like immediately it was just like anger. Just so angry that this was happening. I don't know like how I immediately got to that level, but it was just disbelief. So back to my brother, the worst part, and something again vivid that I remember about that day was that, my dad had to be airlifted from the campsite and taken to a hospital and go through the medical aspects of this. So my brother then is left there at the camp, and they had to sweep him up, take him in the car, drive him back to Salinas. And I remember he came out of the car and he was all decked out in his camping stuff, and he had a walking stick that him and my dad just made and like a bucket hat. But he goes, Tonya, Dad got all sick and something happened, but the helicopter came and it was really cool, and the helicopter took him and he's going to be okay. And the fact that my mom would have to tell him that my dad wasn't okay. Like, I see this cute little face of my brother, like how eager he was and how excited he was to see the helicopter, and then to have to burst the bubble with the news of Dad actually passed away. So that was that day.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but for me, and you just explained it very vividly. So does it feel like it's just right there in your memory? Like you just remember it, like you were going through it again?
It's like a movie reel, and it's not like I sit there and replay it. But if someone asks about the day, I can retell the story, all the details, all the imagery. I can relive it almost. I also have the blessing and the curse of having like a super razor sharp memory, and my family even is like, oh God, what is she going to bring up now from when she was 2? So those things have like stuck with me. But it's not the happiest memory, but I'm also happy not to have lost any memory of that experience.
True. So you were 8. Had you had any previous experience with anyone dying? When she said he passed away, you knew what that meant?
I didn't have any prior experience with anyone close in our family passing away. So that was it. That was the big opener. And it sunk right in. There's no question about what that meant after I'd gotten past, yes, it was my dad, not my grandpa. I think I was so in my own bubble, I couldn't see the kindness for things that happened to myself. It's weird. I actually distinctly remember my dad had a really good family friend, and it was like a friend that we'd go to like their house every Halloween for a big party. And their son was probably a couple years older than I was. And I just remember one time he came over and he said, I have good memories of your dad. I'm really sorry for your loss. And for someone who's probably like 10 or 11 years old, I think like what that person saying those words to me like really meant a lot. So someone else who was on the younger spectrum of the age being able to relate to that experience and have sympathy. I don't know why that stuck out in my head, but it is a memory. The other thing is that I was so fortunate. Our family immediately came out. So my mom's parents from Arizona were there once the phone call happened. They drove out. Family friends from the East Coast came out to be with my mom. So I just remember a lot of people coming and going from our house around that time. I remember like my grandma having to comfort my mom in the middle of the night and all this stuff. So
was your mom just wailing in the middle of the night, or was she? I just that's very interesting to me, because that's one thing that I do remember is my mom was just crying, and it was, someone else was talking to her. It was my grandma. And I was like, oh, my grandma made my mom cry. And no, she didn't. But I was back in my own bubble too, in my room, like hiding out. I didn't want to see anybody, but that's what I remember. Yeah. So I always want to know what sticks out for people.
I remember just one or a couple nights in particular when it was the case that she would be awake. She'd just be awake, and my grandma would have to be with her and comforting her. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that, all the family did come out and they were able to be there.
Yeah.
That's definitely helpful. And we said it was totally unexpected.
Yeah. No signs. It was crazy. And it's really scary because my dad was like, worked out every morning for at least 30 minutes, was like active, enjoyed doing extracurricular sports, and, liked to camp and do things like that with us. And nothing that doctors had detected prior to this happening, nothing that we physically were concerned about, just, living our lives with him. He was doing great. He was over the hill. He was over 50, but he was He looked great too. Yeah, so it was just total shock.
How do you feel like your life has been changed by his death? And this is such a loaded question. I feel like it's unfair kind of to ask because you were so young, but I know it's such a huge impact. So what have you noticed?
Yeah, it's super crazy to think that now, I was almost 10 years old when he passed. Now I'm almost 30 years old. So it's kind of been like 10 years with him in my life that he was like in my life as my dad here on earth, and then 20 years of not. Like, that's just crazy to think about it that way. But, like I said, the first reaction I had was anger. So I spent a lot of my growing up just being really pissy and really nasty towards my family. I think I just took everything and wanted to deal with it myself and push everyone away, and blame, I think, was something that I hope my family doesn't remember as much. Some comments I would say, or, some attitudes I would have about this whole situation. Long time being selfish through my years. One way that shone through was, my mom now just with us kids in Salinas, California, she really needed her family. So we, a couple years or so later, moved to Arizona. So that way she could be with her parents, my grandma, my grandpa, her sister, my Aunt Lenny. That way they could all help her just get on with her day to day. And be there a little bit closer to help her, emotionally and physically and whatever she needed. I can see that now, why that would be so critical. And I would need that if I were in that situation. But, my dad's family lived in Salinas. So it was my dad passes away. 2, my mom's ripping us from his family. Is she trying to forget him? Why would you do this to us? You're ruining our lives. How could you do that to them? And that's how I thought about moving to Arizona. Now it's thank God we have family in Arizona. Thank God we were there. Thank God Aunt Lenny was our second mom, and that we had grandparents, and that my mom had their comfort there. And we could all be together. But then it was just another layer of anger. Why'd you do that to us? And my dad's dad died 2 years later. And I remember, this is your fault, Mom. He died because you moved after his son died. And this is our fault. And I remember that was a pointed blame that I tried to leverage at that point. So I spent probably my teenage years feeling that way too. So those are pretty formative attitudes towards how I spent my middle school and probably well into high school, but slowly chipping away at that. I think, like I said, I've come around to us having been there with the supportive family in Arizona, and they loved me through all that. They comforted my mom through all of that. And when their sadness comforted me as well. So I'm super grateful that we were there. And, with the additional passings of other folks in my family, so I said my grandpa died on my dad's side, but over the past couple of years, it's been my grandma on my mom's side and my grandpa on my mom's side. I think through our collective experience of going through just the passing away of loved ones together, it doesn't get easier, but we bonded over those experiences, even though they can be terribly sad and traumatic. They're shared experiences. We went through it together and we had each other, and there's things that we still cry about together, but there are also things we can laugh about together at this point. So we've kind of grown up together, surrounded, which sounds super dramatic, but I think it really speaks to the strength of our familial ties, and open about these things with each other, and probably joke about it and make people feel uncomfortable who aren't haven't gone through it with us. But it's weirdly an important aspect of our family.
Right. Yeah. I always tell people, we use humor here. So
Yeah. I think
might be a little inappropriate, but that's just
totally. How can you joke about these things?
Is your mom still in Arizona, or where is she?
She lives now in New Jersey. So plot twist. She got remarried, which is great. And, so thoughtful of her is that she didn't explore that, or that was not a thought, that was not her path until, we were well out of high school and out of the house. I was already living here in Hawaii by the time that was happening. So she's gotten remarried to someone she knew from back in high school, which I also am comforted by, not just a stranger entering our lives, but someone who knew my grandparents, someone who knows her story. And similarly, someone who also lost his wife. So I think they were able to reconnect over, again, having that shared experience. and coming together after having built a life of their own. And, I will say how much I appreciate my stepdad, how much he keeps the memory of my dad alive. I think every time we talk to him, he inserts something about how proud your dad would be of you guys and how much I see him in you guys. And we love talking about him, and we talk about him every day, me and your mom. And I just love the life you guys had together. So I appreciate that so much. Same for his wife, so much a part of their relationship now. Sounds strange, but it's a love that
No, I get it. I feel like that's, the perfect relationship, just because that's such a big thing to have gone through. And definitely more bonding comes from that. So awesome. I'm glad that you have him in your life. One thing that you mentioned here about when you were dealing with death early in your life, I would like to hear more about the 9-day prayer tradition.
Oh boy. So 9 days is a long time when you're not even 10 years old yet. So I tapped out of those quite a bit, but there were big gatherings at my grandma and grandpa's house in Salinas. It is a Filipino tradition that, when the passing of a loved one happens, their soul is in, they don't call it purgatory, but it hasn't passed on to heaven or the other place. So what you do is you have these big feasts, these 9-day prayers, and you pray the rosary and other devotions to help their soul pass into the next phase. So it was a lot of Filipino aunties and uncles gathered at the house. It was open garage door party with all the food. We vividly remember these little baby Vienna sausages that we eat during those 9 days. There were a ukulele and one of my aunties and all of them singing Amazing Grace and On Eagle's Wings to the ukulele.
How are those songs for you to hear now?
I love them. When we lived in Arizona, we kind of grew up in the church, and I wouldn't be I'm a very religious, devout person, but I do find comfort in some of those more spiritual songs, especially those that I relate to the experience of my dad passing. So On Eagle's Wings is a big one. I have a tattoo of Eagle's Wings, and that's part of the significance. I have it on a playlist that I listen to here and then just because it makes me feel good or warm and fuzzy or something. And it just connects me to that time. But so the 9-day prayer are real big events. Just remember having to kiss a lot of aunties and uncles on the cheeks. And strong Filipino Catholic tradition.
We'll be right back.
If you have a story you'd like to share, please give me a call at 623-396-6069. You don't even have to talk to me if you don't want to. You can leave a voicemail. You can send me a letter at parentlesspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for taking the time to stop in.
What part of Arizona were you guys in?
We lived in Tucson, so I ended up going to my 5th grade, middle school, high school in Tucson. My grandparents were right in Phoenix, so I'm pretty used to that little 2-hour commute and being in Phoenix on weekends or for special events, and Phoenix, Tucson.
Do you still come back at all?
Yeah, my brother's still in Arizona. My cousins, my Aunt Lenny, whose house we were pretty much raised in, still in Tucson. Arizona is where I consider home, my home state. So I love it. And I'm always happy at the opportunity to go back and be with family there.
What took you to Hawaii?
Oh, man. So I was still kind of a shithead at that point in my life, 19 years old. I didn't really have a college that I was committed to going to. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I knew that I just couldn't be under my mom's roof anymore just because I needed to do something for myself, not for any reason against my mom or living there. It was just, all right, you need to get out and figure out what you're going to do with your life. And I naively Googled something to the extent of, is there college on Hawaii? Yeah, dude, it's a state. There's going to be a university and other regular things there in Hawaii, having never been. And I saw that there was a Filipino language and literature program. And that really spoke to me because I don't speak the language at all. My dad, who was an immigrant from the Philippines, he felt very strongly about assimilating and being American and being able to blend in and be successful in that way. So he did not speak Ilocano to us in the house, so that we wouldn't have an accent. And
is that kind of backwards from a lot of families? Or because I know some families decide to keep the culture very strong, and then some people don't. So I don't know, just in your experience of your friends and your other family, is that?
So it's crazy. So that seemed normal to me growing up there, and all throughout growing up in Arizona, where there's not there's not a heavy Filipino population, at least in my experience there. So when I came to Hawaii, and I was like, where the population is a large majority Filipino, and they just look at me like, one, what are you? You're so tall. Number two, you've never been back to the motherland, Antonia. What's wrong with you? It's like, we just came to America and that was it. And I think I feel a little bit sad that I don't have that I'm not bilingual, that I can't speak my family's language or even the national language of the Philippines, even with the coursework I took here in Hawaii. But the other side of that coin is that thanks to my dad for having the foresight and, having gone through his experience as an immigrant, wanting us to be equipped with the tools that we needed and not just being one of them. I see the value of that, and I thank him for that consideration. But yeah, so I studied Filipino language and literature. That was my declared major coming into the University of Hawaii. I continued with it, but I didn't end up graduating with that major. I ended up taking a different path. But having that Filipino family here and really realizing how much of the culture I was not exposed to in my growing up, other than like 9-day prayer and things like that, it was really beneficial. It was really amazing. That was my first family here on the island, was the Filipino literature and language program students.
So you went there when you were 19, and you're still there now that you're almost 30. So it must have been good to you, and you must like it there.
I love it here. And another, a weird tie about Hawaii. I was not here before I moved here. I just kind of went for it. My mom was very supportive, which thanks, Mom. She and my dad had visited Hawaii together, and she said, I think you're going to do really well there. I think you're going to really appreciate just, how much the communal culture there is and how much there's appreciation for land. And it's just a little bit different. I think you're going to be fine. But the funny thing is about her and my dad in Hawaii is first tape my dad flipped me when I was young was Blue Hawaii, the Elvis Presley soundtrack. And I'd listen to that on the cassette player. I loved it. And, I feel like it's one of those things that I didn't really think about that moving to Hawaii. But when I look back, it kind of comes full circle.
So do you have a family there of your own?
No,
just
you? Me and my partner here, who came later in my path in Hawaii, but I moved here bye, Mom. She's like, joke's on you. I'm going to move across the country now that you've moved across the ocean. So it's hard being in the time zones and the physical distance that's between us. But at the same time, I think, I think my family would agree that I'm not so much of a shithead anymore. So I did a lot of good growing up here. And my brother will be the first one to tell you it's the best thing that ever happened to our family.
Is you moving there?
Yeah, I think I needed it. I think I still had anger and selfishness and things that kind of lingered from the whole experience of my dad passing when I was 9, to the moving, to the just being a generally selfish person, to get out of that and have to grow up and do things for myself to be able to come around and see the lessons that I learned along the way, and be grateful for everything I did have through that experience, be able to take my time now with a little bit more maturity to reflect my path up to that point.
Yeah, well, I see that you look like you're very mature and you have lots of good, mature thoughts. I acknowledge that because I don't feel like I don't know where I'm at, emotionally, I guess, with that, which is why I kind of wanted to start this. So definitely love to hear how everybody else has taken what's happened in their lives and let it shape their lives now. So of the ways that your dad's death has impacted your life, which of those do you feel has had the most impact on your life?
It's kind of that chain reaction of us having to move to Arizona, I think was the biggest thing. It's not necessarily the impact of my dad dying and living in Arizona, but because we made that transition, it was because my dad died, and because I kind of had to start a new path on our journey in Arizona that, gave us the supportive family. I didn't really know how to answer that one just because I feel like it's been all like one experience, but the moving.
Yeah, you just mentioned it, bringing your family closer together. And you said perhaps the experience of my dad passing so early equipped me to deal with loss later in life, which you kind of already said that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And like I said, I don't think that gets easier just because you've lost your father. Like, that's a pretty big one. But every person's death is for a different reason and have a different timeline. And it's terrible. And it's always going to be so sad and hard to deal with. But I think being able to hold on to hope or something, or knowing that we're having the belief that that person like isn't gone, because now you've understood how to deal with carrying their memory with you and going through that experience. I think you can kind of like see the light of it rather than dwell on like all the darkness. So like when my grandma passed away, it was awful. It was because of cancer, and it was just a terrible road through that whole journey. But, we were able to find comfort, one, I guess, because she wasn't in pain anymore, but two, because, she's with my dad now. And, we know what to do when it comes to setting up a funeral and going through all these like processes. And now it's not like the saddest thing to do. It's like you can kind of enjoy memorializing them. Kind of enjoy like the ceremonial aspects of it, and what would your dad want, or what would your Mima want, or how should we honor her? So I don't think it's not easy, and it's always time sensitive and stressful, and there can be really ugly things that come out, but there can also be really beautiful things that come out. And I think, like you said, having that early on kind of helps you work toward the more beautiful parts of the experience as you encounter this again later in life.
So this wasn't on my list of questions, but I always have to ask, are you, and by some of the things you've said right now, I can't quite tell which way I feel like you're leaning. So in regards to like spirituality or church now in your life, do you want to share some of your thoughts there?
Sure. There was another question we talked about counseling. Have you gone to counseling or therapy? And that would be yes. Another thing that was pretty formative in my growing up years, I would say, is going to church camp. That was in Prescott, Arizona, Chapel Rock. It was a wonderful place. And I wouldn't say so much that they were like pounding the Bible and making you read verses, but they gave you a really safe space to be reflective and explore spirituality. And I think that helped me find comfort and peace in some of these experiences. I think that helped move me along into a better path of acceptance and gratitude, and being able to just reflect and assign meaning to everything that we've gone through in my earlier years. So with that, and I'd gone to church every Sunday. There's like a church that I say is my home church when I go back to Arizona, but I wouldn't say like, oh, I'm Christian, or oh, I'm Catholic, or anything like that, or I'm Episcopalian. It's more that, my mom said when I was fighting her one morning, why do we have to go to church? It's so dumb. Like, I don't even believe in God. She's like, well, that's really sad, because of everything we've gone through. I feel like you need to hold on to something. And so I'm just going to choose to hold on to this. You can choose to hold on to whatever you want, but I feel like the best way we can get through is to hold on to hope or something and believe in it. And it's really not something I wanted to hear or accept then, but as time has passed, it has been the case that I hold on to whatever spirituality I have to be able to feel like my dad really has been with me over the last 20 years, that I haven't spent 20 years without him, but that he's with me all the time. Not that he's like an angel or a ghost, but, if there's anything like I'd want to say to him, or like, oh, I wish you could see us do this. It's like, I feel like probably knows what's going on, and like he's probably helped guide the path that we've been on. I feel like I also take, I don't know if it's what's the word I'm looking for, superstitious or something, but it's like I see little signs throughout my day. There could be like a song that comes on, or like, I don't know, a car passing, or even for like my grandma, like I see a certain type of candy and it makes me think of her. Oh, this is really stupid. A time of day. My grandma, there was a joke in my family. My grandma would say 816 kids. It was like her address in New Jersey. And so she would say it's 816 kids. And now I'm like 816, like that's Mima's time, or like 821. That was our address in California. So I'm like, that's Dad's time. And it's like, I'll look at the clock and be like, okay. And so I'll take that opportunity to just, acknowledge them and be thankful and be like, awesome. I had a Mima moment today, or I had a dad moment today. And I think that goes a long way. And I look for that. I don't know if I look for that a lot, or I just like more actively acknowledge that. And that helps me feel like very connected to them still.
Right. Yeah, I have that too with time. And so I completely get that. So yeah, my birthday and my mom's address. No, that's not true. My birthday and the last 4 numbers of my mom's phone number were like the same. So I always look at those. And of course, when we're looking at time, I do see those numbers a lot, but maybe it sticks out more in our memory just because of they're special to us. But that's really cool. Yeah, I like that. And that's kind of where I was going, is if you have any signs of them or what makes you think of them. So good deal. What is a few things that you would say to your dad today if you could?
Oh man. Thank you. I think I mentioned the gratitude before, but I know he worked really hard at his job, but he also worked really hard at like things he liked. So he kind of had this thirst for life and this good work ethic and really strong sense of sociability, and that he passed down in certain ways to my brother and myself, or at least our families will tell us that. We really lean a lot into our family's memories and stories of my dad, because we only had a limited amount of years with him, right? So I think I would tell him, one, Dad, every time your friends or anyone talks about your family, they say, oh, Cons, he was the life of the party. Like that was his thing. He was the life of the party. And my aunt recently told me a story about at her wedding. She's like, God damn, Cons, he comes to my wedding and someone gets a drink with him and like dances with him for like 2 hours. And that's all they have to talk about my wedding was like how much fun they had with your dad. When are we going to see Cons again? That was great. Not like, oh, nice wedding. Congratulations, Lynn and Bill, on getting married. It was like, Cons was the best. Cons was the man. He was the life of the party. So thanks, Dad, for, handing down those traits that you had to us in some way or another. I like to think me and my brother can relate and get along with people like pretty okay. So that was great. Thanks for helping us be hard workers and setting us up to be, I talked about the language, just being cognizant of what you wanted our lives to look like. Yeah. The other thing, we played basketball together all the time. I think I remember a lot of comments growing up about like sports related. This one sticks out. So talking about vivid memories, we were driving through like Carmel one day. I was so young, and there was a guy that only had one arm, and we were just passing along in the car. We weren't even out in the park with them, but my dad sees him catch a Frisbee and he goes, that guy can catch a Frisbee. He only has one arm, Antonia.
Could you not catch a Frisbee?
I guess not to my dad's standards. So sorry, Dad. I never worked on those athletic abilities, didn't play sports, but hope you're proud of me in other ways, which I think you would be. It's really nice to hear from family, friends, and family members like, oh God, your dad would just be so pleased with you and your brother, with everything you guys have done and how you take care of each other. So it's always really nice to hear. And your dad lives on through us, and I love that. So thanks, Dad. Life of the party.
I like that. So then you said you felt like that was passed on through you. So would you consider yourself the life of a party?
Not to that extent, but I don't think my brother and I would hesitate to be the first person on the dance floor, and he'd be like, that's my kids.
We'll be right back.
If you have a story you'd like to share, please give me a call at 623-396-6069. You don't even have to talk to me if you don't want to. You can leave a voicemail. You can send me a letter at parentlesspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for taking the time to stop in.
Do you have any coping mechanisms? And if so, what are they?
God, I'm so glad I'm past like the anger part. Just at my family, that's terrible. I feel so, if there's anything I could tell my family, it's I'm sorry for everything I put you through and made the situation way worse than it needed to be.
So I got to ask, have you had that conversation with your family?
I think not like on the table and let me just tell you how sorry I am. But, we all acknowledge what an ass I was, and I can acknowledge that. And I can, say I'm sorry. And I probably send my mom a couple texts here and there out of the blue on a Wednesday. Hey, Mom, I'm so sorry. I was like such an asshole to you. Love you. Hope you're having a great day. So, it wasn't like a formal apology, but it's been, it's unconditional love of family. Thank God that they don't hold that against me. But, glad we're past that coping mechanism because that wasn't healthy for myself or my family. I think we talked about, the little signs, the little reminders, little ways that my dad lives on. And I think that's, my more adult coping is to just find those bright spots and hold on to them and celebrate them. So I'd like to think I've really turned the corner on the way I deal with that. But, some of it sticks. I love angry music. Like the angrier and harder, the better. And I think that just like speaks to the attitude I had growing up. And like, I will listen to it now. There's like nothing better than getting in my car and just cranking up the volume to full, turning on the most aggressive music. And it just like, it sounds so angry and terrible and scary, but it makes me feel so good inside. Like I get like this emotional and physical response. It's just like, oh yeah, like this is good. And I think that's like, I don't know if I tuck the anger away somewhere and that just like helps keep in check. But, or sad music. I love sad music. I love dramatic music. And I think through my anger and like my more mature happiness side, it's like that remains. That has been like this connective thread. And even last week, I just disclosed to my partner who doesn't like the emotions as much, is not like as in tune or is not as, even doing these, like I wouldn't be able to talk about that with someone. Like I'm happy to. It's just weird, so different in that way. And I told them, I'm like, yeah, I have this playlist called Crying on Purpose. Like, literally, that's what it's called. And it's just songs that remind me of my grandma, my dad, my grandpa, on Eagle's Wings, like the hymn that we talked about. It's all in there. And, I'll listen to it and sometimes it makes me smile. And sometimes I listen to it because I want to cry. And sometimes you're just overdue for a good cry. So that's what that's there for.
I like that idea. Some people have told me that they, the day of their person's death or their birthday, they take those days to really process feelings. And that's something that I'm personally am trying to start doing. And so I like that you have that Crying on Purpose playlist. That is so cool. And honestly, that's probably like what's helped you like be who you are today because you've allowed yourself that opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's important. I think it's like a scary place to access, I think, because especially if it's more recent, which I believe is in your case, it has been more recent than it was in my dad's case. It still hurts a lot and it can be really raw and it's like still not pretty or, all the way to having a different perspective with it. And so it can suck. You like hear a song and you're just ruin your day. But, if you embrace that and allow yourself to do it and work through it, you're going to end up on a better side of it, I think, or at least that has been my experience. And so now it's like, it's this healing process I've had through like carrying those songs with me. And so now it's like, I can have a really good day with this, or if I'm not having a good day, like that's okay. That's what it's there for. It's for my comfort one way or another.
That's good. I really like that because I'm more on the side of your partner. Like if I asked somebody to be a guest and they said, okay, if you, let's trade being guests. You come on my show and I'll come on yours. And I said, you don't have to think about that. Okay. So I haven't done that yet. So that's another reason why I'm extremely appreciative of people who are ready to talk and are willing to share. Is there any particular smell, sight, taste, anything else that reminds you of your dad?
I would just floor me if I ever smell my dad's cologne again. I haven't, but if I did, I don't know like what kind of response that would be. It's unfortunate too. If I smell like a certain type of flower, it's like, that's a funeral flower smell. So smells are interesting. Songs are good, but there's sight. So every time, and sometimes I'll look for those and like, I'll celebrate the things I see that remind me of my family members who have passed, like my dad, but I'll see a Porsche. My dad wasn't like a mechanic or like a car guy by any means, but he worked up his way to be able to get a used Porsche. Very recently before he died, he got his 928 S4. So now if I ever see a 928 S4, I think of my dad and the 2-seater car that his children weren't allowed in, the car that like never worked, but he was always working on. It's like his pride and joy. But I think the other thing, it's weird him not being a car guy, but whenever I see a Toyota Land Cruiser driving around, I just get happy because that was our family car. It was the car we went to the beach in together. It was the car that we picnicked in together. We did tailgates in together in that Land Cruiser. And it's also the car that he drove my mom and me back from the hospital to our home when I was born, and my brother back to the hospital, from the hospital to our home when he was born, in the Land Cruiser. And the best part is my brother has the Land Cruiser. He takes care of it and he drives it. And it's like another way that my dad lives on with us. So I love that. And every time I see one driving around here, which is rare, they're kind of rare now, it just makes me happy. And that reminds me of my dad and good times.
Yes. So when you go visit your brother, do you make sure to ride in the car?
We'll check it out. It depends on if it's up and running at that point. It takes care at this point. But yes, it's usually a priority if it is working that he'll pick me up or we'll go somewhere in the Land Cruiser. And we love that.
Tell me about what you do now for your side business and how that came about. I'm sure we might already know, but go ahead and tell me.
Yeah. Oh, theDLcompany, very new venture in my world. I think just over the last couple of years, I've realized, it's hard to say, oh, I enjoy the experience, or I would look forward to the opportunity to help people through their journey, whether it's like providing services or helping with funeral arrangements or, having gone through the experience and maybe families who don't know everything that's involved.
So take me back a minute. So if my loved one has just passed away and I have no idea where to turn, do I call your company?
We're not at that point yet. That is my vision, is I would like that to be the case. Like, I have a full-time professional job now that maybe one day it can be. We manage construction projects, and basically like what I want to be able to do is manage like the whole funeral and event side of things, manage the vendors, manage the contracts. Like, you guys deal with what you need to deal with. And like, let me just like help you lay out a framework to get it done so that it doesn't have to be family drama. It doesn't have to just be, what do we do now? It's helping to answer those questions. That's eventual. That's the vision. And that's what got me interested. I'm also kind of a crafty person and like just need a creative outlet sometimes. So right now it's goods. And the first thing that I've created as part of theDLcompany and goods is 9-day prayer candles. So back to the novena. And celebrating that experience that I had with my father's passing is I create customized prayer candles for families who have experienced the passing of a loved one or have a friend or other family member that has lost someone, that they can have a personalized candle with a devotion or prayer or saying or a poem or song, anything that they would, be a reflection of the person that they love is on the 9-day prayer candle. There's art that I've made that goes on the design as well. So it's kind of an homage to my experience with my dad and the whole 9-day prayer thing, but also just being a way to acknowledge the experience of others and then have the exchange, be able to share their side with me when we go through the process of working on the candles together, right? So it's my entry point to being part of someone's journey in this.
So if I purchased one of those candles, I would feel, I think, bad burning it. Are you supposed to burn them? I'm sure it's a personal preference, but
it's a personal preference. It can stay on your shelf forever, but it is intended for, if you really are doing a 9-day prayer, it will burn with you for 9 days. Or, if you just want to, another thing that is common in Filipinos, and I just believe Catholic culture in general, is, having your altars dedicated to your loved one. So my grandma always has some like fruit and candies and pictures and candles burning in honor and making offerings to the loved one's soul all around the house. And so I think that it's a good use. It could just be, if you want to, like you said, on their birthday, you're doing something to honor their memory. You just want to listen to a song and light the candle and light that spirit, invoke that, it could be burned or it could be not. So it's really, it could be for ritual use or just to have and to hold. But I think it's just something to acknowledge and to help bridge, that kind of spiritual connection. I think I would hope for folks who are having difficulty or going through this, be able to find that, because it's been really helpful and healing for me personally. And that's just my hope for anyone who's going through and dealing with the passing of a loved one, is to be able to find that hope or find that something they can hold on to, find something to celebrate. So the light through the darkness, that's the DL and the DL company, the balance of darkness and light, death and life. So
Ooh, I like that.
The DL company.
If someone was to purchase a candle, how much do they cost?
They're $36, and you can go purchase them through Etsy. It's a tall pillar candle. It's made of actually plastic and recyclable materials so that it can burn for 9 days. Candle with care, obviously. Please don't burn a candle for 9 days fully unattended. But, you go through, you choose the design that represents what you want it to represent. There are many options. And then I'll work with you on the personalization, having your loved one's name, having the dates or other heading that you would want on there. Pretty much sky's the limit in terms of what we can fit on there. There is a limit, but just so it speaks to you or your loved one, something that will be meaningful to you, something we can work on together. So,
okay. I really like that idea. So hopefully I will reach out to you and be planning a candle. And honestly, I didn't know that like a 9-day prayer, what's it called? 9-day prayer.
Novena, 9-day prayer. I typically call it 9-day prayer.
So you would this candle would literally burn for 9 days.
Some people just with some supervision, but it's been the case, and I know, like at my Leela's house growing up, there was just candles burning all the time, and we're like children around, but they're up in high places, but there's just candles burning all the time, and I think it's just a way to bridge that connection between the heavens or the spirits or whatever your belief is. It's just a way to acknowledge and just be in tune with that and celebrate it. So whether it's the 9-day prayer or just at your ongoing altar or celebration of your loved one, that's where the candle comes from.
Do your candles have a smell? Do you get to pick?
No smells. It's just vegetable wax so that it burns really cleanly and that it burns really smoothly so that there's no fire hazard in the extended burn time. It's a visual and more of a meaning type thing.
Where can we reach you?
On Instagram, I'm theDLcompany. I'm on Etsy, theDLcompany. You'll just have to find the shop on Etsy. And then my website is www.theDL.company. That's it.
Okay.
So we talked about the candles. I think, like I said, that's my first foray into this exploration of how I want to be helping and involved in others' experiences. Eventually it will be things like prayer cards, potentially programs, and then hopefully services sometime in the future. But, it's really so that I can be involved in the sharing like we're doing right here now. So I appreciate you reaching out, and appreciate anyone else who wants to reach out and share their experience or talk or just have someone who can relate.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the services that you provide to people are very important. And I know I've talked to several people who have had, an unexpected death. This is the first death that they've had. And then, you're already in that trauma anyway. And then you do have to go through that process of planning. And so once you get to that point in your company, I think that will be a very, very helpful venture for you to other people. Like that would be so good. So I really like that idea. And I think you'll have big things to come.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you feel like we haven't covered or that you'd like to talk about?
Oh, that was a lot. And I appreciate you just letting me run with it. And great questions too. I don't think that there's really anything else. I guess the one thing, I was listening to some of the other podcasts, which have just been really great, equally sad and terrible as they are good to hear other people's experiences. And some of them are like, well, if I just had one more day, and I don't have any regret about not spending, a lot of my life with my dad on Earth, but it would be cool to have one day for him to like see my adult life here in Hawaii. Like, I think that would be really fun. And we could go be the life of the party somewhere. We get to see that in action as adults together. That would be really amazing if we could have that. This is great. I just really appreciate the opportunity to share and connect over this. So thank you. And you take care.
Thank you. You too.
Empty faces, covered in cars, splitting fake skin, passing me by.
Parentless is recorded in Phoenix, Arizona. Find us on social media and any podcast platform. Music provided by Colin Lococo and the Revolving Birds. Studio provided by Fat Kid Productions. Check out one of the many shows available on our network. I'm your host, Stephanie Relaford. Thank you for listening to Parentless.